set of spiritual discourses by a being known as Bhagwan Swaminarayan that existed in the turn of the 19th century. I'm sorry, Hanaki, I have yet to read your message, but I will absolutely read it. Today we're reading a passage from Gadhadā 160 called Observing Ekantik Dharma, which means, the absolute Dharma. Dharma meaning righteous duty, and eradicating worldly desires. These are desires for attaining something temporary in the world. Now, without further ado, let me begin, and I hope that we can learn from this together. On Phalgun Vadi the 1st, Samvat 1876, which is the 1st of March, 1820, Sriji Maharaj, which is another name for Bhagwan Swaminarayan, was sitting in the residential hall of the Paramahansas in Dada Khachar's Darbar in Gadhadā. He was wearing a white case and had covered himself with a white cotton cloth. He had also tied a white pug around, which was decorated with tassels of white flowers around his head. Garlands of white flowers also adorned his neck. At that time, an assembly of munis, as well as devotees from various places, had gathered before him. Thereupon, Sriji Maharaj said, "Of all spiritual endeavors, to eradicate worldly desires is the greatest endeavor. The means of doing this is as follows. Bearing in mind one's craving for the Vishais, these are the experiences of the senses, in other words, sight, sound, smells, tastes, and touch, one should introspect. Is my desire for God equal to my desires for the world? Is it greater or is it less? One should examine oneself in this manner. For example, if one's ears are drawn to worldly talks just as much as they are drawn to divine talks, then one should realize, my desire for the divine is equal to my desire for the world. One should similarly examine all of the other Vishais, for example, sights, smells, tastes, touch. While examining themselves in this manner, if a person gradually decreases their worldly desires and increases their divine desires, they begin to develop an understanding whereby they view all Vishais, experiences of the senses, as equal. After such equanimity has developed, honors and insults will appear to be the same to you. Moreover, pleasant and unpleasant types of touch will appear to be the same. Attractive sights and unattractive sights will appear to be the same. A child, a young person, and an old person, they will appear to be the same. Gold and refuse will appear to be the same as well. Similarly, pleasant and unpleasant tastes and smells will appear to be the same. When a person can instinctively behave in this way, it should be known that their worldly desires have been overcome. In fact, to behave above the influence of worldly desires is the dharma of one who is Ekāntik, absolute. But if some desires do remain, then even if a person is able to attain samadhi, this kind of absorption in meditation, and control their nadhi and pranas. The nadis are the subtle network of energy that flows through the body, and the pranas are the energy itself that flows, the flows of sensations. Therefore, only a person who overcomes worldly desires is an Ekāntik bhakta, an absolute devotee. Thereupon, Muktanand Swami asked, what are the means to eradicate worldly desires? Sriji Maharaj replied, firstly, one requires firm Atma realization, self-realization. You must understand that you are Atma, the self. Secondly, one should realize the insignificance of the Panch Vishayas, the five senses. And thirdly, one should realize the profound glory of the source of existence. In other words, that source, that is the master of all divine abodes, Vaikunt, Golok, Brahma Mahol, for example. So, having attained that divinity, why should I have affection for the pleasures of the Vishayas, which are futile? One should think of divinity and their glory in this manner. Moreover, if one thinks, if, due to some deficiency remaining, while being reverently in worship of that divine, I become unworthy of going to the abode of the divine, and he were to place me in Indralok or Brahmalok, this is the plane of Indra, who is the deity of the world, or Brahmalok, which is the plane of Brahma, the creator. There is still 1,000,000-fold more bliss there than there is in this world. Even with such a thought, one should become free of all desires for the insignificant pleasures of the world. So, by realizing the glory of the divine in this way, one becomes free of worldly desires. Thereafter, one feels, if I never did have any desires. It was all like some kind of illusion. In reality, I have always been free of desires. This is what one experiences. Such Ekantik Dharma can only be attained by following the commands of a Purush, of a person who is free of worldly desires and who has attained the state of God realization. That is, they directly experience that source within all experiences. It cannot be attained merely by reading books. Even if a person were to attempt to restate those talks exactly, having merely heard them, they would not be able to do so properly. Actually, that's very interesting. I'll talk about that in a second. Therefore, one can attain Ekantik Dharma only from someone who has already attained the state of Ekantik Dharma. And that's the end of Gadhadā 160. It's a nice verse. So, this is such a wonderful verse here about even if one were to merely recite holy texts or the talks given by spiritual masters, they would not be able to convey understanding. Why is that interesting to me? Because that's actually an idea in cryptography called a zero-knowledge proof. Most proofs require giving some knowledge of how you got to that understanding, but a zero-knowledge proof is very special in that you prove to someone that you know something without revealing what it is that you know. And one of the qualities of a zero-knowledge proof is that someone could repeat the entire display of proof that you did, and they would not be able to prove it to the next person. It's very interesting. An example of a zero-knowledge proof is for anyone who's colorblind, for example. You could have two balls, one red, one green, if they're red-green colorblind. And you could give the balls to them and ask them to swap it behind their back. And they pull out one, and then they can't tell whether it's red or green, but you can. And so you tell them not the color, but if they've swapped it or not. So it's a zero-knowledge proof. You're not giving them the ability to see color, nor are you even telling them what the color of the ball is, but yet you're able to prove with zero knowledge that You have an experience which the other person does not. And I love here that we've seen an overlap with spiritual knowledge too, that there is a method of zero knowledge proofs here. But there is a difference, I should admit, that you may not reveal what it is you are realizing, but you can reveal the methodology in which one gets there. So, thank you for listening.